Actually, it's one of two.
Okay.
Oh, sorry, there's two 7Cs, and it's
Yeah, there
separate.
was a policy plus.
Yeah, it's separate.
All right. Essentially, in that policy, if you look at it, the levies and the development of roads in new subdivision development, whatever that is at a charge of the developer. And is square on their shoulders. So this is what, in the case of Mr. Schaefer, who started his issue 10 years ago or so, and I remember when he came to council was the day that I was at the council, and came with Mr. Peavoy exactly regarding that very issue, and the council of the day did not rule in his favor. So, because all people were really not really accepting the plan that was proposed. And if I understand right, at this point in that development, there are at least two of the owners that are not quite ready for development. Don William is really not ready, he's not opposed to it, but he's not ready to develop anything. And Cam Levitt is not in favor. So I don't really understand how Cam Levitt's name is not there, by the
No,
way.
it's not. Well, they don't, it doesn't affect
they-
his land anymore.
Right, because they bought another piece of land. So he is not in favor at all. Therefore, Mr. Sanderson accepted for that project to give 60 feet of his land rather than 30, which is what the normal amount would be. So essentially what we have to decide as council is, are we going to be true to the policy that we have and was drafted by the former council and in fact approved by this council through the land use bylaw? Or are we intending to default?
So a lot of it, when I was going through this and trying to wrap my head around it, comes back to part of what Jeff mentioned when the question was asked, when was the last time that we did this, where the town paid for that kind of infrastructure. And in most of those most recent cases, the town owned land on both sides of it, and were selling the land, and that was generating a fair bit of revenue there. And obviously, I would assume the town raised the cost of their land by the amount of the cost to put the infrastructure in place. I think the town's taken a position over the last couple of councils that they're not in the business of developing land. And if that's the case, then I really don't see that we should be paying for developing that road to the benefit of private land developers, regardless of whether it's just one land developer or whether there's a conglomerate of 5 of them that can potentially do it, which is what the case is here. I don't see how you make that leap.
Yeah, you're making a good case according to the policy we have. Thank you. Councillor Edmonds, I see you shake your head. And
I agree with Councillor Barfuss. I don't think there's any benefit. You know, they say we'll get it back in taxes, but that's 30, 40 years down the way if we're lucky. And, you know, it's not money in the hand.
Councillor Bengry, you raised an interesting point regarding governance. You are absolutely correct. What one council does not tie the hand of the next council. You're absolutely correct on that statement. I think Councillor Green wanted to say something.
I can understand, Mr. Schaefer's conundrum because there are multiple landowners. I can really coordinate doing that. I was looking at the policy a little bit, and there is a little caveat in there. in principle, I guess, just, not, without considering considering or not considering the policy and considering or not considering the situation, my feeling is that, if a developer develops the land, they recover the costs, through the sale of the land. And so my feeling is that if the town wants to participate in this in some way, as long as the town can recover the costs, whether it's through, it mentions local improvement tax, whether it's, off-site levies wouldn't cover it in this case, but my feeling is that I'm not opposed to the town participating as long as the town recover the cost, the same as the developer would cover the cost. And the only reason I think that the town might do that is because we have these multiple landowners, and kind of like, John was saying, without some kind of impetus, it probably won't ever happen because you've got all of these things. So that's kind of my feeling, is that the town could do it, but my reservation is that, we have to be able to recover the costs, and not just through taxes over 30 years. We have to be able to put something on, those properties.
We always have to remember, it's taxpayer money
Yeah,
that we're tying up.
yeah.
So we need to really realize, when you tie up taxpayers' money for the benefit of poor people, you have to really give it a good thought. Is that fair, equitable to the rest of the developers, or the rest of the landowner who have subdivided and will expect exactly the same treatment? Okay, Jeff wanted to say something.
I just wanted to mention in response to Councillor Creed, we had, now Nolan and I, what we're talking probably 7 years ago, we held a meeting up here with all the landowners, and we pitched local improvement, and we about didn't make it out of the room. It was not.
We spent $5,000.
Yeah, and we've already spent $5,000. Found out we didn't have landowner consent, and frank, I hate to admit that, but we found out we didn't from either Levitt or Weston. So absolutely local improvement's an option, and not to weigh in too heavily to the debate, but I'm not opposed to the town participating, provided the town is a proportionate beneficiary of the sale.
Yes.
So if the value of the land, let's just say hypothetically, and everything is $300,000, and we go put $500,000 into it, so we have an $800,000 project, as long as we get 2/3 of every sale of every lot, maybe that's something reasonable. However, Don Williams isn't going to turn a shovel until he's long gone. And Gary Sanderson isn't going to turn a shovel as long as he owns that land. So your realistic return, even on off-site costs, by caveating the land, is pretty bleak. And as much as I get where Mr. Schaefer's coming from, the other thing a little bit ironic and interesting about this policy is it was developed as a result of this request. This wasn't an arbitrary policy that came into play and just so happened to stymie Mr. Schaefer. Mr. Schaefer and Bagazi had come to council multiple times, and council said, we need a policy where our stance is with private land development so that we can tell them this is what we're doing going forward and stop them coming back constantly to council. Again, nothing against him personally, it was just, like he said, he was beating that dead horse. So that policy was specifically to deal, generally with private land development, but specifically to deal with 11th Street.
Or it was a consequence of those meetings.
Yeah, no, it's an interesting debate because Mr. Schaefer just paid all the costs of 3rd Avenue, like he said, in good form. And where I struggle is if you're willing to pay 100% of the costs and receive 100% of the revenue, why aren't you willing to pay a proportionate share of the cost and receive a proportionate share of the revenue? The math works out the same in the end.
But there is no willingness.
So it's a tricky debate.
Right.
Those lots would have to be $175,000 a piece.
Oh yeah, for sure. But that's a business decision he needs to make. This way he gets to sell them at a more attractive rate because the town subsidizes the cost of development, which is maybe a difficult argument to sell.
Just so I'm aware, the cul-de-sac scene coming off at 12, Street West, the 30 Avenue West, is that the property in question?
No.
Which one is it?
So you see those really irregularly subdivided
Down the
lots?
bottom below that?
Yep, they're immediately west of those. There's 4 lots immediately west of John. John has a very irregularly subdivided
Yeah,
lot.
totally.
And then Mr. Boyson is just south of him
Maybe
on another
this-
very irregularly shaped lot.
Okay, so,
11th is good.
While he's looking that up, may I ask a question?
hold on.
We have this lovely 2010 history of the issue
Yeah.
that Nolan wrote up
Yeah.
in November. And it goes through the motions that were passed, carried, some of them withdrawn, overruled, most of them carried. My question is this, there's a motion in here that indicates we paid the 5,000. And then there's a motion that indicates that it was approved to spend the 20,000 to get it done. And that carried. Now, I understand after that, though, we contacted Bob Weston, and then there was a wrench in the whole thing. Is that's what halted that? So I'm just curious, politically, if we have an obligation, we've got this carried motion by a council, but, I mean, can we legitimately say, you know what, we tried, we did all we could, and Bob Weston stopped it, and now everything historical came crashing to a halt, we have to start fresh today? Is that how we're approaching this?
So there was a motion to spend up to $20,000, and then the motion was clarified again by Councillor Russell at the time to say,
Yeah.
up to 20,000 including procurement of land. When we met with Mr. Weston, he wouldn't, was it 75,000 or something?
More than 75,000.
We couldn't even get the first access lot for less than 75,000, and so that's really where it got.
Plus, in the process of getting to the point of doing spending the 20,000 to do the survey and actually do the road, we sent out letters to all the landowners for them to sign over and say, we gave them a map showing their portion of the road, they would have to sign the paper so that we could have the road, so we could actually do the survey. And we maybe had 3 signed out of 5 or 6.
And so at that time, the council made a motion to tell Mr. Schaefer that if you can go acquire all the land, then we would consider moving on with what we said. And the lands, again, now he's made provisions, he's changed third, never acquired Levitt's land, because
Never acquired Holland's.
never acquired Holland's at that time if it went north.
Okay.
And so that's where it stalled out.
So the motion that was made there then was specific to being able to acquire the land
Yeah,
with it?
when it was clarified, it said the 20,000 had to include procurement.
It was contingent to
Yeah.
the procurement of the land.
So is there no access from 10th? I mean, John takes his access from 10th.
Well, he has 3rd Avenue now.
Yeah.
So he built 3rd Avenue west, to
Right.
go west to join with 11th. Then that's what he's proposing, that it go from 3rd Avenue south. So yes, he's saying we don't need to worry about Weston's now because I built 3rd Avenue. But since then, you've established a policy that says you're not in the game of building roads for people. So that's where, and it's been lying relatively dormant since 2010. But it is really kind of where it went quiet.
Right.
But I guess I'm still asking, is there no way you can access this development from 10th? Going past Holland's and then,
John put a access right away down the north side of his property, which the subdivision committee had said they would not allow, but he went ahead and did it anyways. So, as it sits right now, that is the access for that one large lot in the back. But in order to make it access into 4 lots, he would have to redo that utility right away and somehow bring it around so it accessed all 4. But the subdivision committee didn't actually allow the access in the first place. He just did it after they allowed Boyson's subdivision. He went in and put a utility and road access in there because it was his land without asking anybody. And so that is how the back lot has access now. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been able to subdivide it and it had no access.
Well, and to be honest, Councillor, we've never felt it was good planning to allow access through right-of-ways of someone else's property. If that's your only access to your home,
Yeah.
is through easement over someone else's, I think you're just begging for problems long term.
All right, so essentially, we have that policy in place. So what is your position, Councillor? I know the position of two councillors. We need to have a sense of where we're going with this.
So just for clarification, based on the procurement question, right now, Schaefer has access to all the land we would need to build the road. And that's not, we're not looking to procure
That's what
anymore.
he's saying,
Yes.
Okay.
So,
It's yes, but it's a little bit more
Yes.
complex.
Don't get to the side.
John will give up the land for the road. Gary Sanderson will give up 60 feet because Levitt will not give up any. Now, you can go in and take it if you want a real political nightmare on your hands to just go start taking land, which I wouldn't suggest is that hill you want to die on. And Williams, Don Williams, via buying the lot of Bob Bagazi's, would consent to give up his 30 feet as well. And again, Don has no, when we look at return on investment, two of those three players have no intent of developing. That's the fact of the matter right now. And I think Don would tell you that. He didn't buy that lot to split 5 off of it and have a bunch of neighbors.
In fact, his position is, he bought the lot over there because they were a large lot, and his understanding was that they were going to stay and remain as large lots. The history is in the making. Times change.
My feeling is similar to Councillor Creed's. If there was an economic benefit to the town, then I'd be for this project, but the amount of money that he would have to charge for those lots, I can't see the economic benefit. If this was Lethbridge or Calgary, there's no question. But we don't get that kind of money for a lot here, so I would see taxpayers very upset with us if we were to go ahead and spend the kind of money that is needed. That'd be a nightmare.
I think.
It has to be a benefit to the town. It has to make financial sense before I would be covered. Yeah, it'd have to be cost recovery. Then I might. So
I made a public hearing 4 minutes ago. I'm sorry, we need to adjourn the public hearing.
Yes, okay. All right, so we will carry on later on.
So I move to go into public hearing.
Thank you so much. All in favor? Thank you. So the public hearing is regarding bylaw, land use bylaw 1647A, and Jeff will present that, and Councillor Peavoy, we know you need to be excused.
So this is a proposed amendment to bylaw 1647A. And the preamble is, whereas the municipal council wishes to amend the land use bylaw so to provide for the ability to develop a residential accommodation in conjunction with an approved commercial or industrial use. This would be in the drive-in highway commercial C2, general industrial I1, light industrial I2 land use districts as discretionary uses. And that is the only proposed amendment to the land use bylaw. For council's information, we advertised this, we received no feedback on the bylaw, and obviously we have no one in attendance tonight.
All right. So essentially, the proposal is very simple, is to allow for commercial and residential to kind of be tweaked together.
So essentially, like we have some of our buildings in the downtown area where there's commercial on the main floor and residential on the ground.
Exactly.
It
Same
allows that
idea.
same kind of construction.
Same idea.
In those areas.
Pursuing on the same kind of
Yeah.
outside of the corridor, yes.
So is this, so we would be able to accommodate a lot on the edge of town for
Yeah,
development there?
yeah, prolongation of Main Street, yeah.
Yeah, for some context there, this is what spurred the change, and then it was determined that we may be able to add it as discretionary in other zones as well, so we don't have to amend the bylaw every time. and leave it as discretionary.
Is to create a general rule for us, a general principle, which is not a bad thing. No,
We do have a couple other lots in industrial that already have that, and we kind of missed picking that up when we redid the bylaw, because the old Cardston Express building has an apartment in the top, and there's a few others that are industrial that already have that.
so essentially, that is what the story is. We kind of passed the first motion, past council, so.
Is this holding up our planning commission?
Not for anything right now.
No.
Okay.
So today, what can happen, we can simply have a second and third motion.
So just procedurally, Madam Mayor, if you have no one speaking to it in the gallery, you can
Yeah.
adjourn your public hearing,
Yes.
go back to council and make your
Thank you,
motions.
Jeff. I don't do that often enough.
All right, I move that we end the public hearing and reconvene back to council meeting.
Thank you. All in favor? All right. So now what we need to have second motion
I'll move
passed.
second reading of bylaw 1647A.
Okay, land use bylaw.
Amendment.
1647A, that's what it is. Yeah. So,
Bylaws.
thank you. So I need a third reading, motion for third reading.
I move to approve bylaw 1647A land use bylaw amendment for third reading.
Should it say 1647 amendment or
No,
something?
Well, it says on here,
Bylaw is.
I'm just reading what it says there.
Yes,
1647.
1647 is.
Okay.
All right, all in favor? Thank you. Well, that's well done. We're moving along.
Thanks, Norm.
Thank you,
Mayor,
Nora.
can we revert back to this 11th Street?
Yes, that's
Yeah,
exactly
that's
where we're
where
going. All right, so we know the position of four councillor. What is your position, Councillor Bengry?
First of all, I want to know where this sits into our west area structure plan, because this seems to be a hang-up for the past 10 years or whatever. How is it affecting our west area structure plan? And can we go forward with our west area structure plan before we take care of this, or should we do this, take care of our area west structure plan? I want to know how it's all tied together.
Mayor?
Please.
So the structure plan is to give guidance to developers as to the maximum development of that area. That's the intent. This complements it with the exception of jogging around Camp Levitt's house. To be frank, the road would not be planned in the structure plan to go around the property, but like I said, it's not reasonable to expropriate for the street. So it would definitely be in concert with the area structure plan. The lots would not be subdivided down any further than the structure plan allows. 11th Street was planned in the structure plan. But again, it's with the policy of council, we use the structure plans to give guidance to the developers to a large degree. That this is your maximum density, and this is where your roads need to be, and this is, those kind of things. Now, occasionally we have anomalies like that we just saw in the West Area Structure Plan today, where we had old subdivisions that didn't complement the newer structure plan. But in that area, there wasn't an old structure plan that can conflict with it. So we don't have old subdivided roads that the town owns overlaying a new structure plan. So that was a bit of an anomaly issue. But no, it's certainly, whatever you choose on this, I would not say it frustrates the area structure plan at all.
See, my second concerns is storm drainage of that area. That is a big issue up in that area.
Yeah, it will be about
Huge
$1.5
issue.
million issue in that area.
Yeah, and start developing a road. What do we do with that issue of water?
So, because we have the storm retention pond in the structure plan. So it's the responsibility of the developers of the road and the lots to ensure their to accommodate drainage and culvert locations and all those kind of things are where they need to be to get to the eventual treatment pond.
Okay, so if that's the case, Jeff, then once we develop a road or roads, then we immediately have to develop our water retention and our spring runoff area. So that's going to be put a big money.
So, respectfully, sort of is my answer, Councillor. What pushes the development of storm retention ponds is more the homes than the roads. So we can accommodate by culvert and ditch the flow of the water.
Okay.
But it's when you start paving and asphalting roofs and cementing driveways, now you start to see that increase in runoff. And that's going to necessitate now. This goes back to, and I wish we were done this by now, but we're not. This goes back to the fact right now we do not have an off-site levy for the storm retention pond.
That's right.
And that's a problem. And I know I've been telling you this for a while, and I wish we were done, but I don't have the right numbers in front of me yet to bring that bylaw back to you. And so that's what'll help solve that. As subdivisions occur, we get the off-site levy, that gets reserved, it goes to build the storm pond. That's the point. I don't want to be a conspiracy theorist here, but it's very convenient for Mr. Schaefer to subdivide everything he owns in that area right now while there's no levies.
And that's an issue.
It frankly is. Everyone there should be pushing to subdivide right now because there's no levies.
Then Mayor, I suggest that this council needs to start immediately correcting our administration so that we can start looking at the levies.
Oh, I have the direction, Councillor.
It already
Yeah, I have the direction from Council.
quite a while back,
Yeah.
except it's extremely time consuming.
Yeah, the issue with levies, not to delve into another topic, is when we propose this bylaw, I guarantee you for the first time in a long time, the gallery will be full. So everybody from the west area will be here to oppose the levy. And if the numbers cannot be fully justified, then the bylaw will fail. That's why it's gone right now. That's the whole purpose. You had a delegation that came repeatedly and opposed the levy bylaw. The numbers couldn't be defended well enough, and so council rescinded the bylaw because that was really the only option.
Yeah,
And so-
and I remember that was past council, I
Yeah.
remember that very well.
So I want that done. It needs to be done,
Right.
but it's not there yet.
Okay, so one more question and then we need
So,
to
yeah,
make a
just-
decision.
Given, the different property owners, does Mr. Schaefer own enough land that he could even put in a road? I mean, he can't even do it, right?
No, he has Mr. Sanderson and Levitt between him and Third Avenue.
So, so he doesn't even have the capability of
Doing it
developing a
himself,
road.
no.
Not to say he
Well-
couldn't purchase that land from Mr. Sanderson. He would have that option to go, he'd have to purchase 30 feet from Mr. Williams and 60 feet from Mr. Sanderson. I only say that because I'm sure Mr. Levitt's isn't for sale.
Yeah.
So he'd have to get 60 feet from Sanderson, 30 feet from Williams. He could technically, although an odd subdivision, he could technically purchase that and then create the road out of it.
All right, so,
Wouldn't make sense
No.
financially.
We need land and
no.
No,
because
that
all
becomes
that
quite
is-
expensive for him, for
all
sure.
that
And
is
he's
quite
now
expensive.
serviced those
There's
other
no money
property
attached
owners.
to-
Right? So it's great for them.
Everybody knows I've been there.
I'll throw this out, Council. There seems to be some discussion of if it makes some kind of financial sense, it could be entertained on some level. I don't know what the cost for development of the road looks like today because it hasn't been addressed since 2010. We could do a little investigation into the costs. We could meet with Mr. Schaefer and the other landowners to see if they would have any consideration of sharing revenues with us. Could they price those lots to share revenue with us to make it a more palatable financial situation? I don't mean to be cynical, I don't think it's ever going to work, but we could at least explore that
Yeah.
to show them in good faith, if it made sense financially,
Right.
we would participate, and then the numbers can help make that decision for both parties, potentially. It's a little bit of doing, but not too much, I don't think.
Okay.
In doing that, are we,
You're saying your policy's flexible, by the way,
that's what I'm trying to get
is what
to.
you're saying.
In doing that, are we saying, that, well, here's the policy, but it's really not the policy if
Yeah.
you wave enough money in front of our face? I mean, either the policy is our policy or it's not.
No, I totally agree with you. We drafted that policy to have a document to refer to and to avoid that issue of having to decide half a dozen here, half a dozen there. That was the reason for the policy, because we wanted to be certain that the same principle applied to all. But having said that, we know very well that there are cases where you do something different.
Policies aren't written in stone, I get that. I just want to make clear that if we go that way, what we're saying is that our policies,
and that's a problem.
that could create other problems down the road.
The problem then becomes a review of your policy to become a policy that you can work with. So at this point, there is administration that proposed something, but it goes back to the question I asked earlier on. Do we want to stick to policy, or do we want to decide the policy we want to have to fix a problem is success? That's the question, it's the governance issue, maybe.
My understanding for the reason for having a policy on this in place like this is that so that there isn't the impression that one person is getting particular favor over another. That if this decision is made on a case-by-case basis, that's literally what it opens it up for. And that's why I really think we need to stick with the policy.
Okay, how many of you would feel comfortable sticking to policy?
Sure.
Okay, well, there's at least 4 out of 6, so that would be,
Can I qualify what I'm saying? I feel uncomfortable spending tax dollars for a perception of one development. If all this other land was purchased by a developer and they wanted to develop something, then I can see there's going to be more participation and the cost will be lower. But to move forward here, and I think that's why it's been stalled since 2010.
There's one person who wants to.
Because it's always been the one person. I say good on John that he wants to do development. I have no problem with that at all.
I agree with you.
But the fact is that there's not enough participation by another developer, unless he was to own all that land and develop it, then the cost would be a lot less prohibitive per lot. And then it would be affordable. But to develop all that infrastructure and a road for 4 lots, it's not cost effective.
The other thing I find interesting, we've been hearing for 6 years that there's people waiting to buy these lots. If I had people waiting to buy my lots, I would be doing something. You know, even if it cost me money up front,
Yeah.
and the others didn't want to develop it,
Yeah.
I think I would be doing something.
But
So where are these people that want to buy the
Well,
lots?
he is doing something, he's just, but he stalled it. I mean, this question I just asked Jeff is that it's not possible unless he buys all of those lots. I mean, and I don't know if he's, has the capability of buying all of those lots from everybody. I tried to put myself in if that was my land, and you're stuck with it. I mean, of course, if it was my land, I would just ask the town to change it back to agricultural and put chickens on it, but, I mean, if you can't develop it, what, we may as well do something.
Well, that was the other thing I was going to bring up, if I may, Mayor. There's no policy in place that says whoever owns this land that Gary Sanderson currently owns has to develop it, right? They could buy that 10 or 12 acres, whatever it is, and keep horses out there, build a barn out there, and have a little residential agricultural, right? And so there's no guarantees that it's going to move forward at any rate. And if Mr. Williams isn't prepared to do any development on that, I can't see where participation by other people is actually going to happen.
Just one other thing I was thinking of to keep in mind, since this policy, you've had 2 other pretty big developments where the developer's gonna pay solely the cost. So you'd have to justify that to both Ellison's
Yes.
and Gord Atkins.
Yeah.
And frankly, John Schaefer, who just paid for all of Third Avenue.
Yeah.
And
So-
that comes back to
You
the
have a
policy being
situation.
consistent.
Exactly, yeah.
If we change it for one person, it gives the impression that somebody's getting special privilege.
Well, also the Mountain View Estates condo development, they pay for their own stuff too, right?
Okay.
So that's,
Are they private roads in Mountain View States, basically?
Yeah.
So essentially, I don't see no desire to really change anything, which means administration can maybe,
Can I ask for a motion to direct administration to inform Mr. Schaefer
Yes.
that the council will abide by the private land development policy?
absolutely.
I'll make that motion.
Okay.
Inform have the administration inform Mr. Schaefer that we're going to abide by the land development policy that we have in place right now.
All in favor? Did you vote, Councillor?
No, I'll vote opposed.
Okay. Okay, against?
It wasn't recorded. so-
Thank you.
Just so that.
It's all right, Councillor. You don't need to justify, Councillor. You don't need to justify.
I'm going for a break.
Okay, sure. We can have a motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn.
Don't move this on adjourn.
Please move to recess.
Move to recess.
Does he adjourn?
Yeah, you did, I just followed.
I was going to help you.
Well, we've done, I'd be on my way.
All right. Okay.
Actually, you're really
All in
close, so.
favor? Okay, thank you. 5 minutes.
Actually, motion